Imagine waking up in your $5 million condo, walking to the kitchen to make coffee, and realizing the floor feels slanted. You place a marble on the counter and it slowly rolls toward the window. That was the daily reality for residents of the Millennium Tower. For years, this was the Leaning Tower of San Francisco, a 600-foot skyscraper that was sinking an inch every single year because its foundation was essentially balanced on a wet sponge. Now it's 2026. The engineers say they've performed a miracle. They anchored the building to the Earth's crust while people were sleeping inside. They've won Project of the Year. The city says it's over. But if you look at the monthly monitoring reports, you'll see a much weirder story. The sinking stopped, sure, but the building? It's still not standing up straight. So to understand how bad this got, you have to understand how good it looked in the beginning. Back in 2009, the Millennium Tower had just opened. San Francisco hadn't seen a big downtown high-rise in almost 20 years, so this was a big deal. It was 58 floors tall, 645 feet high, with 419 luxury units. Apartments started around $2 million and went past $13 million for penthouses. Altogether, the building brought in about $750 million in sales, while costing roughly $350 million to build. On paper, it looks like a massive win. And to sell something like that, you need a strong name behind it. They got Joe Montana, 4-time Super Bowl champion and a Hall of Famer. He was out there promoting the building and even got a lease-then-buy deal at a discount. That made it seem like he really believed in it, or at least that's how they wanted it to look. But while all of this success was happening above ground, something important was going on below it. The building stood on 990 foundation piles. These were pre-stressed, precast concrete columns driven into the ground. That sounds solid, but here's the catch. Those piles only went 60 to 90 feet down into a layer called columnar sand. The actual bedrock was 200 feet down, so the piles never reached it. Instead, they were just gripping sand, relying on friction to hold up a structure weighing over 200 million pounds. That design choice mostly came down to money. Reaching bedrock would have added about $4 million to a $350 million project. The geotechnical report also predicted only 4 to 5 inches of settling over the building's lifetime. So, from developers' point of view, this approach seemed fine. Peer review wasn't pushed either, even though a nearby project at 80 Natoma Street had a similar foundation rejected. They skipped that step, and everything still looked good on paper. The problem is what sat underneath that sand layer. Below the columnar sand is called Old Bay clay. It's soft and compresses slowly under weight. So when you place 200 million pounds on top of it without anchoring into bedrock, that clay is going to shift, little by little, over time. And that slow movement didn't take long to show up. By 2010, just a year after people moved in, residents started noticing issues. Doors wouldn't close right. Floors had a slight tilt. You could feel it before you could see it. Elevators started acting strangely. People even reported hearing cracking sounds at night. At first, it was subtle. But by 2016, it wasn't subtle anymore. The building had sunk 16 inches and was leaning 14 inches to the northwest. For comparison, the Leaning Tower of Pisa took centuries to lean that much. This one did it in just 7 years. Now you've got a tower that's sinking and visibly leaning right in the middle of one of the most expensive real estate markets in the country, and 419 owners watching their investment lose value in real time. The lawsuits showed up almost immediately. The HOA went after the developer, the builder, the architects, the geotechnical firm, basically anyone connected to the project for over $200 million. Then the city filed its own lawsuit, saying the developer had hidden the sinking data from buyers. Around the same time, Joe Montana filed separately in 2017, asking for $2.7 million back plus damages. His argument was simple. He was being used to promote a building they already knew had problems. At that point, Millennium Partners tried to shift the blame. Right next door, the Transbay Transit Center was under construction, and they argued that groundwater pumping during that project had made the soil compress faster, speeding up the sinking. It wasn't a ridiculous idea. Soil and water are closely connected. But the Transit Authority responded with a key detail. The tower had already sunk 10 inches before their project even started. So now everyone is suing everyone. The real cause is somewhere in between, and right in the middle of all this are actual residents just trying to live in a building the world has started calling the Leaning Tower of San Francisco. And the financial damage made things even worse. Property values dropped hard. Some owners even argued in tax appeals that their units were worth zero. And honestly, for resale, that wasn't far off. On average, people lost about $320,000 per unit. That $13 million penthouse? Closer to $9 million now. Lower floor units lost 40 to 50% of their value. And the worst part was people couldn't just sell and leave. There were barely any buyers. So they were stuck, paying mortgages on homes they couldn't sell, living in a building they couldn't escape, while cracks formed in the basement and windows started to bend from uneven pressure. By 2018, the building was sinking about an inch per year. Engineers estimated there was a kind of limit, around 40 inches of total lean, where basic systems like elevators and plumbing would stop working, making the building unlivable. They were already more than halfway there, and still no clear fix. After years of legal battles, hundreds of parties involved, the full San Francisco legal chaos, a global settlement was finally reached. About $100 million was set aside to try to fix the problem. The engineer brought in was Ron Hamburger from Simpson, Gumpertz and Hager. And the situation he faced was extremely unusual. You've got a 58-story skyscraper that's already occupied and slowly sinking into soft clay. You can't evacuate the residents, that's not realistic legally or practically. You can't take the building apart from the top. So the only real option is to work from the outside, from the sidewalk, drilling all the way down to bedrock, about 250 feet, while people are still living inside. The original plan called for 52 new piles, each 24 inches wide, installed along Mission and Fremont Streets and connected to the existing foundation. Hydraulic jacks would slowly shift the building's weight off the weak sand layer and onto solid rock, while engineers monitored every movement in real time. Construction started in October 2020, but by summer 2021, things went wrong. The drilling process itself was disturbing the soil, and the building started sinking about an extra inch in just a few months. Work had to stop, and the engineers went back to rethink everything. The new plan was more controlled. They reduced the number of piles from 52 to 18, but made each one much stronger. Each could handle 500 tons. They also changed how the piles were installed to avoid disrupting too much soil and added what are basically safety mechanisms to protect the original foundation if anything shifted unevenly. The load transfer happened in stages, first in January 2023 and then again in June. By September 2023, the work was complete. $100 million spent, 179,000 hours of labor, 18 piles installed. And it worked. The sinking stopped. The lean even started to reverse slowly, but for the first time in over a decade, it was moving in the right direction. This kind of fix had never really been done before, and somehow they pulled it off. By 2025, the project was getting recognized everywhere. It picked up the CONC Excellence Award, then COC Project of the Year, and finally NCC Structure of the Year, the highest national award in structural engineering. That last one was especially notable because it was the first time it had ever been shared between two projects. Ron Hamburger accepted the award at the 2025 Structural Engineering Summit and said the fix didn't just repair the building, it restored confidence in its future. Around the same time, San Francisco's Department of Building Inspection officially closed the case. The building was declared safe, up to current seismic standards, and no more structural work was required. On paper, that's the end of the story. Problem solved, move on. But that's just the official version. The actual data tells a more complicated story. When engineers first modelled the fix, they expected about 4 inches of tilt recovery within the first 6 months. But by early 2026, the building has only recovered about 2 inches, and it's still leaning around 27 to 28 inches overall. Now, the part of the building supported by the new northwest corner is basically stable. It's settling at just 0.032 inches per year, which is almost nothing. That section is doing what it was designed to do, but the rest of the building is a different story. The central portion, which is still sitting on the original friction piles, continues to settle slowly, about 1/10 of an inch per year. Engineers say that rate is safe, and technically it is. It's well below the 0.25 inch threshold that would trigger concern. But the key issue is that it's happening separately from the stabilized section. So now the building is behaving in 2 different ways at once. One part is locked into bedrock and stable. The other is still slowly compressing into the same clay it's been sinking into since 2009. Because of that, the building has to be monitored until September 2033, 10 years after the fix. Every month, a new report gets filed with the city. Every month, more tiny movements are recorded. And for anyone thinking about buying, just knowing that ongoing monitoring exists is enough to make them hesitate. You can see that hesitation in the market. 1-bedroom units that sold for over $1 million in 2014 have recently closed at around $615,000. The rest of San Francisco's real estate market started climbing again in early 2026, but the Millennium Tower didn't follow. Online, the story hasn't faded either. Videos titled things like "Still Leaning and Sinking" and "Problem is worse than I thought" keep getting views. Some of them rely on outdated or incomplete data. For example, claims about the northwest corner still sinking aren't supported by the monitoring reports. But the concern driving those videos is real. Because at the end of the day, the building is still about 27 inches off vertical, and the people living there know it. From an engineering perspective, the story has a clear ending. The fix worked, the awards were justified, the building is stable by every technical standard. But for the people who bought there back in 2009, it's not that simple. Many of them are still there, still paying high HOA fees, still watching monthly reports, still living with the result of a decision that saved $4 million on a $350 million project. The tower stopped sinking. The awards were earned. But a building that wasn't built right the first time can be repaired. It just can't be forgotten. So what do you think? Was this ultimately a success or a failure that got patched well enough? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Megabuilds for more stories like this. Thanks for watching.